Welcome back to Half Hour Horror. This time we're cracking open a real classic,
Oh, yeah.
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or modern Prometheus.
Nice.
But we're going deep, specifically into the LibriVox audio version,
Okay.
which is full of chilling details and even some seriously passionate listener reactions.
Frankenstein. It's amazing how the story written over 200 years ago
I know, right?
still manages to give us goosebumps.
It really does. And today,
Yeah.
we're not just talking plot points.
Right.
We are going to be dissecting how Shelley creates that lingering sense of horror,
Uh-huh.
the kind that stays with you long after the story is over.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is she achieves this not through graphic gore,
Right.
but through atmosphere, psychological tension,
Yeah.
and really digging into the dark side of human nature.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
Starting with the creature himself,
Hmm.
I was struck by the fact that he's never given a name in the book. It's just the creature, the monster, the fiend.
Yeah, that lack of a name is so powerful.
Really is.
It dehumanizes him from the start, making it easier for both the characters in the book
Right.
and us, the readers, to see him as something other, something monstrous.
Yeah.
It makes you question, when do we decide someone or something is a monster? Is it based on actions or simply appearance?
That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
Speaking of appearances, the creation scene is where things get really intense.
Oh, yeah.
You can almost smell the damp lab,
Uh-huh.
feel Victor's frantic energy as he describes stitching together body parts, trying to breathe life into this thing.
Victor's obsession with pushing scientific boundaries, his need to create life,
Yes,
is both fascinating and disturbing.
it is.
We have organ transplantation today, prosthetic limbs,
Right.
but back then, manipulating the human body in such a way was purely the realm of horror fiction.
It's like you can feel the line blurring between scientific progress and the macabre.
Yeah.
But it's not just the visuals.
Right.
The way Shelley describes the process, the animation of lifeless matter,
Yeah.
is truly unsettling. It makes you wonder, is the horror in the result
Uh-huh.
or in the act of creation itself?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It taps into our fear of playing God,
Yeah.
of tampering with the natural order.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how some of the user reviews on the LibriVox page reflect this very fear.
Oh, really?
Some listeners find the book atrocious,
Wow.
calling it unnatural and disturbing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But others praise it.
Right.
They're captivated by the mystery, the psychological depth, the gothic atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're getting a glimpse into different dimensions of fear,
Yeah.
all responding to the same text.
Exactly. It really highlights how subjective the experience of horror can be.
Right?
What one person finds terrifying might bore another to tears.
For sure.
It all comes down to individual perception and maybe even our own personal anxieties about science and the limits of what humanity should explore.
But regardless of how you react to it,
Yeah.
there's no denying that Shelley builds suspense masterfully.
Oh, she does.
It's not about jump scares or overt gore.
Right.
It's the subtle details,
Yeah.
the slow burn of dread
Mm-hmm.
that makes Frankenstein so effective.
Right. She uses foreshadowing brilliantly. Right from the beginning, Victor hints at the darkness to come, the price he'll pay for his ambition. He warns us that his story is one of unparalleled misfortune.
Right.
And those words echo throughout the novel, creating a constant sense of impending doom.
It's like a shadow hanging over the entire narrative.
It is.
Even in the quieter moments, you just know something terrible is lurking around the corner.
Uh-huh.
It's like being in a creepy old house
Yeah.
where every creaking floorboard could signal danger.
Exactly. And then there's her use of vivid imagery,
Yeah.
especially when describing the creature.
Right.
Yellow skin scarcely covering the work of muscles and arteries beneath.
Oh, wow.
Dull yellow eye that opens with a convulsive motion.
Yeah.
These descriptions are both repulsive and strangely captivating.
It's like that morbid curiosity you get at a car crash.
Yeah.
You don't want to look, but you can't help yourself.
Right.
And Shelley plays with that tension so well.
She does.
She knows how to draw us in even when we're repulsed.
And it's not just the visual imagery.
Mm.
She also uses sound to create a chilling atmosphere.
Okay.
The creature's groans, the howling whine, the creaking of the ship as Walton pursues Frankenstein through the Arctic.
Uh-huh.
It all adds to that feeling of a world on the brink of chaos.
It makes you feel almost as isolated and hunted as the characters themselves.
Right.
And speaking of isolation,
Okay.
That's another key element of horror in Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Both Victor and the creature experience it,
They do.
but in very different ways, don't they?
They do. Victor chooses isolation driven by his obsessive ambition. He
Right.
shuts himself away from his family and friends,
Yeah.
consumed by his work, and that isolation breeds a kind of madness, a detachment from reality.
He becomes so fixated on creating life
Yes.
that he completely forgets about the consequences, the potential for things to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, and ironically, the more isolated he becomes,
Right.
the more monstrous his creation seems to him.
It's as if he projects his own growing darkness onto the creature.
It is.
But the creature's isolation is even more profound,
Yeah.
and in a way more tragic.
Uh-huh.
He's rejected by everyone he encounters simply because of his appearance.
It's true.
He's denied the basic human need for connection.
And that's heartbreaking, but it's also terrifying.
Yes.
Because it speaks to something very real about human nature,
Hmm.
about our fear of the other.
It makes you wonder, who is the real monster in this story?
Right.
Is it the creature who was born innocent? Or is it the society that rejects him, that drives him to violence?
That's the question at the heart of Frankenstein, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's a question that continues to haunt us even today.
Really does.
So I want to put this to you, dear listener.
Okay.
Do you find Frankenstein's creature to be a monster? Or do you see him as something else, something misunderstood?
We'll be back in part 2 to explore that question in more depth.
Sounds good.
So keep those lights on.
Welcome back to Half Hour Horror. We're continuing our deep dive into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein
Yes.
and grappling with the question, is the creature truly a monster?
It's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he does some pretty horrific things.
He does.
But when you hear about his experiences,
Right.
the constant rejection and isolation,
Yeah.
it's hard not to feel some sympathy for him.
Exactly. And that complexity is what makes this story so compelling.
Right.
Shelley doesn't offer easy answers.
No.
She wants us to confront our own prejudices, to question our assumptions about good and evil.
Okay, so let's explore both sides of the argument.
All right.
On the one hand, the creature is responsible for some truly terrible acts.
Uh-huh.
He murders innocent people, including Victor's younger brother and his beloved Elizabeth.
Right.
Those are monstrous acts no matter how you spin it.
There's no denying that. And some of those user reviews on the LibriVox page
Oh, yeah.
really hammer this point home.
Yeah.
Several listeners call him a demon, a wretched fiend.
Wow.
They can't see past his violence, his rage.
I can understand that reaction.
Yeah.
He takes lives, destroys families, spreads fear and chaos wherever he goes.
He does.
But then on the other hand, you have to consider his origins.
Right.
He didn't ask to be created.
No.
He was thrust into this world, abandoned by his creator, and met with nothing but fear and hostility.
It's a classic horror trope.
Yes.
The idea that isolation can breed monsters.
Right.
And Shelley really leans into that.
Yeah.
The creature's loneliness, his yearning for connection is palpable.
It is.
He's like a child desperate for love and acceptance, but he's denied that basic human need because of his appearance.
His isolation is even more profound than Victor's.
Yeah.
Victor at least has memories of love and connection,
Right.
even if he chooses to cut himself off from them.
Yeah.
The creature has nothing but rejection from the moment he opens his eyes.
And it's that rejection, that constant sense of otherness,
Right, yes.
that warps and pushes him towards violence. He tries to connect with people, to learn about the world, but he's met with fear and disgust at every turn.
He even tries to reach out to Victor
He does.
to appeal to him for understanding, for companionship.
Right.
But Victor, horrified by his own creation, rejects him again and again.
That repeated rejection, that betrayal by the one person who should have cared for him,
Yeah.
is what fuels the creature's rage, his thirst for revenge.
So is he a monster because of his actions? Or is he driven to those actions by the monstrosity of others?
Right.
It's a real chicken and egg situation, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's the brilliance of Shelley's exploration of monstrosity.
Yeah.
It's not just about physical appearance or even violent acts.
Right.
It's about the potential for darkness that exists within us all, the capacity for cruelty and rejection that can turn even the most innocent creature into a monster.
And it makes you wonder if the creature had been met with kindness and understanding, if he had been given a chance to learn and grow. Would he have still become a murderer?
That's a question that haunts the entire novel, and it's a question that has no easy answers.
Right.
But I think it's worth asking ourselves, how often do we judge others based on their appearance, their differences? How often do we contribute to the creation of monsters through our own fear and prejudice?
It's a chilling thought. And it makes you realize that the horror in Frankenstein isn't just about a creature on a rampage.
No.
It's about the darkness that exists in all of us.
Right.
The potential for cruelty and violence that lurks beneath the surface of even the most civilized society.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those subtle elements of horror that we discussed in part 1.
Yeah.
The foreshadowing, the vivid imagery, the chilling atmosphere, all of those techniques work together to create a sense of unease, a feeling that something is deeply wrong, not just with the creature, but with the world he inhabits.
And even the way the story is told through layers of narration adds to that sense of unease. We're never quite sure who to trust, whose perspective to believe.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, but we're missing some of the pieces.
Yeah.
And the picture that emerges is both fascinating and terrifying.
And then you have those starkly contrasting listener reactions on the LibriVox page.
Right.
Some find the story deeply moving, others are repulsed by it.
Those differing responses are a testament to the story's complexity.
Right.
It holds a mirror up to our own fears, our own prejudices,
Yeah.
and we all see something different reflected back at us.
Some see a monstrous creature, others see a tragic victim.
Right.
But perhaps the true horror lies in the realization that both interpretations can be true at the same time.
Yeah. That the line between monster and human is much thinner than we like to believe. And that the power to create monsters lies not just in the hands of a mad scientist,
Right.
but within each and every one of us.
Wow, that's a chilling thought to end on. But before we wrap up part 2,
Okay.
I want to circle back to something we discussed earlier. The idea that the creature's lack of a name contributes to his dehumanization.
Ah, yes. It's a subtle detail, but it has profound implications.
It does.
By denying him a name, Shelley makes it easier for us to other him,
Right.
to see him as something less than human.
And it makes me think about how we use language to label and categorize people,
Yes.
often based on superficial characteristics or assumptions. Those labels can have real-world consequences,
They can.
shaping how we treat others and how they see themselves.
Absolutely. Words have power.
They do.
They can be used to build bridges or to create walls. And in the case of Frankenstein's creature, the absence of a name becomes a wall,
Right.
isolating him, further reinforcing his otherness.
It's a powerful reminder of the importance of empathy,
It is.
of looking beyond labels and seeing the humanity in everyone, even those who seem different,
Right.
even those who might frighten us.
Well said, and I think that's a good place to pause for now. We've explored the complexities of monstrosity, the impact of isolation, and the power of language to shape our perceptions.
Yeah.
But there's still so much more to unpack in Shelley's masterpiece.
Right, and in part 3, we'll delve into the legacy of Frankenstein, its lasting impact on popular culture,
Okay.
and what it continues to teach us about the human condition, the monstrous potential that lurks within us all, and the enduring power of storytelling to confront our deepest fears.
So until then, dear listeners, keep those lights on.
Yes.
And remember, the monster might be closer than you think.
Welcome back to Half Hour Horror.
Yeah.
We've been digging deep into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein,
Yes.
exploring the chilling creation, the creature's tragic isolation, and that lingering question,
Right.
is he a monster or just deeply misunderstood?
And now it's time to shift gears a bit and talk about the monster's legacy, because this story, it has tentacles reaching far beyond the pages of the book.
It's true. Frankenstein has seeped into our culture, influencing everything from movies and books to how we talk about scientific advancements.
Right.
We use the name Frankenstein to describe anything created that backfires, any unintended consequence of messing with the natural order.
Think about it, those iconic images. The bolts in the neck, the lumbering gait, that tortured soul behind the creature's eyes.
Yeah.
They've become shorthand for monster in our collective imagination.
It's wild how a story written over 200 years ago can still feel so relevant.
I know.
When we're talking about AI now, genetic engineering, the power of social media to shape our lives.
Right.
All echoes of the themes Shelley was grappling with back then.
The dangers of playing God, the fear of the other, the ethical dilemmas of scientific progress.
Right.
These are timeless anxieties that Frankenstein brings to life in such a visceral way.
And it's fascinating how the story has been adapted and reinterpreted over the years.
It is?
From the early stage plays to the Universal monster movies with Boris Karloff, to all those modern retellings, each generation seems to find something new. Something reflective of its own anxieties in Frankenstein.
It speaks to the story's incredible depth, its ability to be a mirror reflecting our own fears back at us.
Right.
Remember those user reviews on the LibriVox page we talked about?
I do.
Some praised the book, others found it atrocious.
Yeah.
It's like the story itself is a kind of Rorschach test, revealing something about the reader as much as it does about the characters.
That's a great point. And it makes me think about how each of us, when we engage with a story, we're bringing our own baggage, our own experiences and anxieties to the table.
Right.
We're not just passively consuming the story, we're actively shaping it with our own interpretations.
Exactly. We're all a bit like Victor Frankenstein in that way, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're taking the raw materials, the words, the ideas, the emotions the story evokes, and building something new, something unique to our own understanding.
So in a sense, Frankenstein isn't just a story, it's an invitation. It's asking us to grapple with these big questions. What does it mean to be human?
Right.
What are the limits of scientific ambition?
Yeah.
Can we ever truly understand or overcome the other, both within ourselves and in the world around us?
And the answers, of course, are never simple.
No.
They're complex, messy, and often disturbing.
Yeah.
But that's what makes Frankenstein such a powerful and enduring work of horror.
Right.
It doesn't give us easy answers. It forces us to confront the darkness, the uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we've created.
And it leaves us with those lingering questions.
Yeah.
The same ones we started with, but now hopefully seen through a different lens.
Hopefully.
After this deep dive, after all the angles we've explored,
Right.
do you see Frankenstein's creature as a monster? Or is he something else entirely?
And what does your answer reveal about your own understanding of humanity, of monstrosity, of that blurry line that separates the two? Those are the questions we hope you'll carry with you as you step back into the world.
Thanks for joining us on this chilling exploration of Frankenstein. And remember, dear listeners, keep those lights on.
Yes.
You never know what might be lurking in the shadows.
Until next time on Half Hour Horror.